So here is a 10-pound beef brisket that I'm going to trim and get ready to smoke. This is the meat side, the flat. You can see where the point comes in, and then the fat side. We got a lot of work to do on this to get it ready. So first of all, I like to set it up and trim about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch off of this entire leading edge. I have to be able to see what I am going to be trimming in terms of fat, so it helps to make a cut. And that's a good start, and this has a lot of fat on it. All right, now we're going to trim on the other side. Now this already has a large piece of meat exposed here, and I don't want to cut too far into that, but this definitely has to come down a bit. Because again, you want to be able to see what you're doing. All right, now flip this over to the meat side, and all this loose stuff is going to come off, because some of it is silver, some of it is just a decal fat, but it doesn't help the end product at all, so off it goes. Okay. Now we'll come back to what to do with this big piece of meat, sorry, this big piece of fat here in just a second. Next thing I want to do is this little end here, this flap, is so skinny. On this particular roast, this thing is only about, gosh, maybe 3/4 of an inch thick at best, and that is going to burn. So first of all, I want to make a straight line. I'm going to just cut that off. It's going to burn up anyway. No point in having it on there. And then I want to round this a little bit. And just feather it in. Now, you can see on this roast, my grain is going this direction. So I'm going to want to slice the flat this direction when I'm all done cooking. When this comes off the smoker, it's going to be hard to tell where the grain is running. So I'm going to cut a nice big wedge right here so that I can see that's where I begin. This end is rounded, this is nice and at a 45-degree angle, and that'll help me identify it when it's time to cook it. Now, for this big piece of fat here, you can almost just grab this and pull this thing off. This is where the point is starting to connect, and this is a very hard fat and it's not going to render, so I'm going to trim that down quite a bit. Now I'm doing this sort of slowly. It's better to trim a roast slowly because you can always cut off more. It's a little hard to put it back on if you cut too much off. All right, that looks pretty good. Now, I have a big piece of fat right here. I'm going to start carving into that a little bit. Again, very hard fat is not going to render. We'll do the rest of it from the other side when we turn this over. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to take this down just a little bit more. So one thing you want when you're trimming a brisket is to try to get the thing as basically as flat as you possibly can. Remember, you're cooking this so that the overall temperature is about 165 when we wrap it, about 203 when we're done. And it's hard to do if you don't have a relatively flat piece of meat. As you can see here, I've got a lot of fat to come off here. Part of the reason I did that trim on the edge was so that I could see how much fat to pull off. I want to have an end of about 3/8 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch here when I'm all done. Now I just cut a bit into the meat. That's what you don't want to do. So I need to be at a more of an angle here and take it down slowly. You want to try to avoid having bald spots like that. It's not the end of the world, but you don't want a whole bunch of them. All right, let's finish up what I messed up right there. Oh, that's not too bad. That was just a very small piece of meat, so not a big deal. So I still have this angled a little bit. So we're getting there. So this fat cap is a lot thicker on the edge than it is in just even a little bit. Much thicker out here. So it's okay to angle the knife a little bit and cut into that. This is that big piece we saw on the other side. All right, that's looking better. All right, now I want to take this down a little bit more, but not too much, because I know that the meat is just right under there. All right. Now on this side, there's not a lot of fat at all, so there's probably nothing to trim there. Okay, now, this fat in here, I want to trim this down a little bit. Now there's still some hard fat right here. Let me trim that just a little bit more. Again, I want to end up with about 3/8 of an inch to a 1/2 inch. Not much more than that, because it just doesn't, it's not going to render well, and it doesn't do anything for the end product anyway, so why have it? All right, I'm going to flip this around. Now, by the way, it's a lot easier to trim one of these if the roast is super cold. So I took this right out of the refrigerator before I started to trim this. So I took off the silver as much as I could on the other side of the roast. There really isn't none accessible on this side. This point, you can see the point. You can see the grain running this way. This is the flat, and then the point is here. So this fat piece that is joining the point and the flat, we're going to carve out a little bit, because this is going to make it a little bit easier to identify where to start carving this thing after it comes out. Again, you're not going real deep into this, because I don't want to destroy the integrity of that point and the fat that's holding it together just yet. I want this to cook, but I want to be able to get in here and find it later on. So it helps to just come in here and pull some of this thick fat off. There we go. Okay. A little bit more. All right, that looks pretty good. Now, so I want to get this as flat as I can. I don't like this particular piece of fat that is sitting right on top, and the meat that under it is just kind of coarse and grainy, and this is going to burn up anyway, so that's going to come right off. Again, I want to make this thing as flat as I can as it's cooking. All right, that's looking a lot better. I want to continue that with this fat piece right up here. All right. So this is the fat that's separating the point from the flat, and I still have a fair amount of fat right here that I'm going to pull down a little bit, because that's still a little bit too thick. All right. All right, that's looking pretty decent. Again, I want this to lay flat, so trim this up so it does a good job. Now, there's a lot of debate in the brisket world about whether you cook one of these bad boys fat side up or fat side down. And the competition guys are always going to do it fat side down. And I think the real answer depends on where your heat is coming from. If you have a smoker where the heat's coming from the bottom, then expose the fat side down. If your heat's coming from the top, put the fat side up. Now I'm going to be doing this in a Kamado Joe, which is basically a convection oven. So I'm going to have a big diffuser plate in there, and I'm not going to have a whole lot of direct heat. In fact, the whole thing is going to be indirect heat. So I'm going to cook it fat side up because I want as much of this fat and flavor to penetrate into the meat as absolutely possible. So I'm going to check my edges. I've got nice clean edges all the way around. Let's check this piece right here. I'm not happy with where the point is on this edge. I've got this rough edge right here of fat that's just going to burn up, so that's going to come off. But other than that, I'm liking how this is looking.
Be sure to watch my next video on how to cook a brisket and make wonderful burnt ends out of the point. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, let me know. And please subscribe. We've got new videos coming out every week. See you next time on Austin Eats.